Hi guys! Welcome to my class on Spirituality 101. My name is Cho. I am a professional astrologer and you can find me at Astro Forecast on Instagram. If you're coming from Instagram, then hello friends! So awesome to see you. If you're not, then welcome new friends. Just so you guys know, I am a professional astrologer now, but it was only in February of 2020 when I quit my corporate job in order to pursue this passion full time. So it's really only been about 9 months for me. My spiritual awakening was a huge part of that transformation, and that's what I'll be sharing today. I am doing a 3-part series on the basics of spirituality. This is part 1 about my own personal awakening story. Part 2 will be about the fundamentals, defining exactly what spirituality is, how we connect to it, and what on earth the collective is going through right now, at least to the best of my knowledge. Finally, part 3 will be on practical tips for how you can deepen your own connection and find your faith. This is also where I'll be sharing resources and things I studied that help me really believe and prove the existence of something greater than us. Let's get started. First, I want to give a quick background on where I came from before my spiritual awakening process started in 2017. I was raised as a Christian. I spent most of my childhood going to a Presbyterian Christian church. I loved many parts of my experience there. Like, I loved my community, I loved the friends I had there, I loved the food we got every Sunday. I really did enjoy going to church, but for some reason, I still didn't quite feel connected to it. I believed in Jesus, I believed in God, and I accepted that in my heart, but it just still didn't feel real to me. By the time I had left for college, I had really stopped believing in this concept altogether. Perhaps I thought it was a part of growing up and maturing out of church, but I stopped believing in it. I started calling myself an atheist. I didn't really think anything happened to you after you died. For some reason, I just decided that there was really nothing more to life than this physical existence, and I was comfortable with that. Now, after college is really when things started to get bad for me. I graduated in 2012, and that's specifically when I started to become very afraid. Now, this might be triggering to some, so please skip ahead if you don't want to see headlines of mass shootings. For me, it really started with the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012. From that point on, it really felt like I was receiving a constant, never-ending onslaught of horrible, horrible news. Headlines of bombings and terrorist attacks and mass shootings in schools, airports, nail salons, movie theaters, everywhere you could possibly imagine. I was also living in Washington, D.C. at the time, which could have definitely been the target of a terrorist attack, so that amplified all of my fears. This got much worse in 2016 after the state of our divisive politics, and I really started to live life in a perpetual state of anxiety. I essentially spent all of my early 20s in a state of fear. But the thing was, this state actually felt normal to me. Once you get used to feeling bad, it actually starts to feel normal. And I'm sure many of you guys can relate to this. I had anxiety, but it was still manageable and it didn't really interfere too much with my day-to-day life, or at least my job. So I thought it was normal to always feel scared or sad or anxious. That's just life and we just gotta deal with it. This all changed for me in 2017. In 2017, I experienced the most traumatic event of my life. It's really as if my personal worst nightmare came true. Someone I love, one of the most important people in my life, they were involved in a terrorist attack. And it was the Charlottesville attack in August of 2017, where someone ran their car into a group of people who were protesting the Nazi rally. My loved one was there at the protest, and they were directly in the path of the car. They actually got hit by it. And we actually even found a video of them later in one of the news outlets that showed just how close they were to death. Literally a second later, and their head would have been run over by the car. That is an image that still traumatizes me to this day. Of course, after all this happened, you can imagine like immediately everything turned upside down. Like it was like all my anxiety, all my fear, what had once been low enough at least to be manageable, it suddenly came out in full ass force. Like it really felt as if a fire hydrant had been broken and I just couldn't stop it. I became scared of everything and anything, like shootings, attacks, fires, car crash, cancer, North Korea. Like literally everything you saw in the news, I was afraid of. At the time, I was also riding the subway to work, which terrified me, and I started carrying around a bulletproof shield because I just didn't want to be attacked. Like I carried it around in my backpack. I also spent a shit ton of money on survival gear because I was really convinced that I would be next in some way. I was incredibly afraid of death, like because I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in a higher power or anything like that. And that was really comfortable for me because I didn't have to deal with the unknown. But that's also where a lot of fear came in from me because I was very afraid of the unknown. I was so afraid that I essentially stopped living. Like I stopped going out, I stopped seeing my friends or like going to restaurants, doing anything fun. I basically started to live life as if I was dead. Then we get to January of 2018. I finally started going to therapy because I knew this deep anxiety was not something that was going to go away on its own. I specifically did cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps you change your own relationship to your thoughts. This really helped a lot, but I was still very afraid. Because my primary fear was around death, I actually started to read a lot about near-death experiences. And these are accounts from people who have experienced some kind of death, like whether that means their heart stopped beating or they were declared brain dead, but then they were resuscitated and brought back to life. And these people talk about what they like saw on the other side. I was really surprised by how so many of these stories seem to talk about reuniting with a higher power or a greater source. And this source is specifically made all out of love. They also talked about how death is really not the end and how our consciousness lives on after our body dies. I read so many of these stories. It did make me feel better, but I still didn't quite believe it deep down. Like I thought there could be another like scientific explanation for why these people saw what they did, like something about brain chemistry or just like our body trying to relax. At the very least though, I started becoming open to the possibility of something else being out there. Around this time, I also started trying to meditate, calm down my thoughts, try to find some freaking peace in my heart. It was never really that consistent though, and I had a hard time sticking to it. I also started seeing repeating numbers a lot actually, especially a lot of ones. And I knew people called these angel numbers because I Googled it, but I was definitely still skeptical and I thought it could be confirmation bias. Slowly, like month after month, it felt like there could be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, but it was really up and down. Like everything felt like a roller coaster, and sometimes things were good, sometimes things were okay, sometimes things were really bad. Then we get to October of 2018. This is when things were back to being bad. We were in Libra season, but the sun was actually going through my personal 8th house of death, rebirth, and transformation. Of course, like I didn't know this at the time because I was not into astrology, but that's what was going on. October 10th is when everything changed for me. It was really the darkest night of my life, besides Charlottesville, of course. My loved one who had experienced the attack, they had a mental breakdown that night because, they were just triggered by some things related to the attack. They said some of the craziest shit that night that they don't even remember saying the next day. Because of that, I had my first ever panic attack where I was like sobbing hysterically in a bathtub. It really felt like this was the lowest moment of my life at that point, at least. Somehow, finally, I went to sleep after crying my eyes out, and that's when I had a dream. In this dream, I saw a church that seemed to be flooding with water. Like it looked like a river was going through it. I was really scared, of course, and I was trying to run away, but then I saw my loved one going into this flooding church to try to stop it. I saw them very calmly, like walking through the church, walking through the water, and they got to this place where it almost looked like they put in a key and the water stopped. That's when I woke up. Immediately, the very first word that came to my head was rebirth. This is a rebirth. I then thought this is a transformation where you are being cleansed with water in order to be reborn. And I just have to say, like, these thoughts did not feel like my own at all. Like, it really felt like someone had implanted them into my head. Cause like, I don't just like wake up and have profound thoughts or insights about the world, immediately. Usually when I'm waking up, I'm like super groggy and tired and not like really thinking about anything. This dream felt incredibly significant to me. It felt very significant, and I knew instantly that it was some sort of message, at least, that was being delivered by someone or something that was outside of myself. It really felt like someone was trying to talk to me, as if they were saying like, hey, I know you're going through a hard time right now. We're just here to help, and I want you to know that. I've really never had a dream like this before, and I've never had one since then. I really knew that this dream was not of this world, and what confirmed it for me was the fact that the next day, like when I woke up, I saw a crazy amount of repeating numbers, more than I'd ever seen in a day before. I saw 11:11 a.m. and then 1:11 p.m. and then 11:11 p.m. I also saw $111.11 on my bill that day. That alone confirmed to me that this was something big, and that day I was filled with this sense of hopefulness and optimism that I really hadn't felt in years, because it truly, truly felt like someone was trying to talk to me, like someone was trying to reach out. I was not alone. I also had the sense that everything I just gone through, like all the horrible bullshit, had actually been put in place for me to get to this specific point now, because I was so afraid of death. It was almost like I had to find something to believe in order to get myself out of it. This dream gave me the proof that there was something beyond the physical world, and I just had to reach out in order to connect to it. Immediately following this dream, I started to get much more interested in spiritual practices, like more than I'd ever had before. It almost felt like a mindset shift. I definitely started meditating more, but I still really wasn't good at it, I will say. Like, it was hard for me to do. What I did start doing a lot more of was praying, actually. Like, I started praying a lot to whoever, whatever was out there, because it just felt like the only thing I knew how to do at that point from my religious background. Like, I started praying. At first, I definitely was doing it in this super traditional way, where I literally got on my knees at the side of my bed and I prayed to Jesus, because that is the only thing I was taught, and that's the only thing I had seen in movies. Like, I thought that's how you were supposed to pray. But still, it definitely did not feel right to me in some way, and I mean, it like really hurts to be on your knees like that, so that was not gonna fly. I was starting to feel a little bit disconnected again, but then I realized that while I was praying, I was thinking about my grandmother a lot. She had passed away many years before this all happened, but she was specifically the image I would see in my head as I was praying. With this, I started to realize that, like, for me at least, my image of God, higher power, whatever, it's like, it's not Jesus or anything else I've been taught. For me, God is the feeling of being nurtured, being loved, like this maternal energy, almost like a feminine energy. So I started to call this God Mother, after grandmother. And that's really what I've stuck to since. Like, I pray to Mother, I talk to Mother, I ask her for help, and I really do feel her presence. At this point, I really want to emphasize with you that spirituality is a very individual thing. I always equate it to like your fashion style, because of course, we all dress differently based on who we are as a person, and to me at least, like, spirituality is the exact same way. We need to let go of the notion that there is a right way to do things or a wrong way. As long as it is something that is helping you feel more loved and helping you be more loving to others, then that's really all that matters. And honestly, nowadays, I don't even pray. I just like sort of talk to Mother in my head. You know, sometimes how we imagine having conversations with people in our heads, that's essentially how I connect to her. The second thing I did immediately following my dream was that I actually started to acknowledge the signs I was receiving, like the repeating numbers. Instead of being so skeptical and like thinking it was confirmation bias and trying to push them away, I started to actually allow myself to believe. Like, yeah, these numbers might not be anything, like they might be coincidence, but I mean, they might also be something. They might also be meaningful. And what does that mean for me? What else then could I receive? Finally, and really most importantly here, I started asking for signs from the universe directly, and I started putting it to the test. This is really crucial to deepen your connection and find your faith, because we are really dealing with something that we cannot see and touch. And we as humans, we really do need some sort of like tangible result or evidence in order for us to believe. I started asking for signs for the things that I really needed help with. I specifically remember the very first thing I'd ever asked about was whether or not I should rent this apartment, because we had been looking. My boyfriend and I had found an option that was quite cheap actually, but it was also very small for both me and my boyfriend. So we weren't sure if we should get it. I asked the universe for a sign, like just let me know whether I should get this apartment or not. This is what happened. I was watching YouTube one day and I randomly started watching this video, and it happened to be about saving money. It was like literally at that moment, it felt like a light bulb exploded in my head, because I got up really suddenly and I just like shouted, "Oh my God, I need to get this apartment. Like I need to save money." And again, it was like one of those situations where it felt like someone implanted this thought into my head. In the end, like I did end up getting that apartment, and I do feel like it was absolutely the right choice for me, because my lease for that apartment ended in February of 2020. And that like sort of gave me this deadline to quit my job, move cities, pursue astrology full time, right before the pandemic really hit us here in America. So I definitely believe that it was divinely guided. And here I am in 2020, 2 years after my spiritual awakening dream. It's really been an amazing journey since then, and I've learned so much more about like the true nature of our reality. I'll go way more into the specifics in part 3 of this series, but right now I just want to talk about where I am at currently, like where I'm at 2 years after my awakening experience and what I've really gotten out of this entire journey. First thing, I can honestly say that I am not afraid of death anymore. I am not afraid of it. Like, I don't think it's scary. It's gonna sound crazy, but I honestly welcome death in many ways. Like, I'm actually looking forward to it. And it's not like I want to die right now, but I really know and I really trust at least that our consciousness goes on after our death, because we are truly infinite beings. Like, we only feel finite because we are on Earth in this three-dimensional like physical space. So many near-death experiences talk about how surprised they were actually that their consciousness, their thinking kept on going after death. When we die, we will return to the source, God, like higher power, whatever you want to call it. We will return to it, and we will also remember our knowledge of who we were, plus who we were in past lifetimes. Death is really not the end. And when you are not afraid of death, that is really the ultimate freedom in this earthly world. Like, that to me is true freedom. Freedom to like quit your job, to say what you want, do what you want, or like be who you want, because I mean, the worst thing that can happen to you is death. And it's really not that scary after all. The second thing I've gotten out of this experience is the feeling of pure unconditional love. The feeling that I am loved no matter what, for all my flaws, mistakes, imperfections, like all of it. The higher power, as I know it, is made out of pure love. And all it wants is for us to share this love back with other people. This understanding has really helped me to accept myself, basically, and to treat myself way better, because Like, of course, I am human. Like, I have ups and downs. I have moments when I beat myself up and feel really bad about myself. But it's really much easier now to pull myself out of it because I just think there is someone out there that loves me so much that they think I am perfect no matter what. How can I then not love myself the same way? Finally, one of the best things I've really gotten out of this whole awakening experience is the feeling of being supported and guided by my spirit team. I've come to understand that we each have a team of beings, like otherworldly beings essentially, that are helping us through this journey of life. People call them spirit guides, like angels, helpers, whatever you want to call it. We each have them. Some of them are people we know, like ancestors or people we met in past lives. And sometimes they're just like people we don't know, like random souls who are here to help us out. I first got introduced to this concept through Kate, who is a super gifted channeler. I will link her Instagram below, but I actually got a spirit guide reading from her, and she introduced me to one of my guides, who is apparently a warrior woman who looks like the character from Brave. Never seen this movie, but I know this is what she looks like. This really resonated with me because Kate also talked about how this specific guide leaves me quarters, and I have received quarters before, so that made sense to me. Now that I know that I have this guide, I also talk to her in my head and I ask her for help, just like I do with Mother. With this point, I really want to emphasize that you are not alone. Like, you are not alone, you have help, and you really don't have to go through all of this by yourself. Even if you never ever acknowledge your guides, they will be there just waiting for you to reach out. All you need to do is find that trust and open that door. And I will go more into how you can do that in part 3 of this series. Okay, with all that said, here are my final takeaways for this video. First, spiritual awakening looks differently for everyone. I don't want to scare you into thinking that you need to experience some horrible, traumatic, catastrophic event in order to have this sort of awakening. Yes, it does often stem from a challenging event. This is what spiritual people call a dark night of the soul, but it really doesn't have to be this way. It could be about from something very beautiful, like the birth of a child or a profound conversation or even a meeting with a spiritual person. It also might not be this sudden shift as it was for me, at least with the dream. It could be more of a gradual transition. It really just depends on what your soul needs to experience at this time. With that, I want to emphasize that spirituality is really truly individual to us. There's no right or wrong way to do it. All you really need to do is to just start that journey and start connecting in the ways that it feels the most right to you. If you don't want to meditate, then don't meditate. If you want to go to church and read the Bible, then go to church and read the Bible. Really let go of the notion that there is one way to do it. With that, also let go of the notion that there is any judgment with this. Again, the higher power as I know it is made all out of love, and it is really unconditional. As long as you are doing the things that are for your own highest good and for the highest good of others, then that is really all that matters. And you know what? Also, it's really not going to be perfect all the time. I myself still go through plenty of ups and downs in my spiritual journey. The only thing is that I'm just much more stronger in my faith now. And that's really what we're trying to get to, is to build that foundation. Now, with all this, if you still have doubts or you feel like you really can't do it, I want to end this on a note of hope. Just know we are going through a collective shift right now. All of Earth is changing. I will talk more about this in part 2, but what you need to know now is that this shift is happening and everyone is starting to awaken to their spiritual side, whether they are conscious of it or not. Because of that, we are raising the vibrations of the earth, and that is actually making it easier for everyone to get connected to their spiritual side now. Whether or not you personally feel like you are spiritual or religious or anything like that, it is actually easier for you to connect because you are being influenced by those around you on an energetic level. Like, yeah, some people might call this a trend or an aesthetic, but honestly, the outcome is still the same. We are all awakening. Every horrible shit that has happened in 2020 has only been a part of this process. So just trust that you can do this too, and the universe will start showing signs to you. All you need to do is take that first step. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to part 1. I hope this was helpful for you in like any small way. Please stay tuned for the rest of this series, and I will talk to you guys soon.